Hello, welcome once again to the Call to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Colby Rich. With me today is my friend Sam Boyle. Sam is a police officer. He's also a veteran. He's a husband, a father, a Christian. And we're going to get into all of those things today. Sam, how are you today, friend?
I'm doing great, Colby. Thank you for having me on, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I promise. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Well, my wife Amanda and I, we've been married for 18 years, and we have three girls. Stepdaughter Victoria is 22. I have a 16-year-old daughter Reagan and a 13-year-old daughter Allie. We live here in the Sherman-Grayson County area, except for Tori. She's married and she lives up in Ohio. But the rest of us are all still here. We stay busy, man. The girls are in cheer. My wife and I are both in school, and we both work and serve in the ministry. So yeah, I have a whole lot of spare time.
Yeah, it sounds like very similar to our deal. My kids are 17 and got to get this right, fixing to be 15. And so we got baseball playoffs this week and then cheer. We just had cheer tryouts for varsity cheer for next year a couple weeks ago. So we're out there with you, man. But three girls. I have one
Three,
plus my wife, two, but you have four women
four
in your
girls in the
family
house, man.
yeah, well, you moved one out, but you still got three. So
Yeah, one's off the payroll, as I like to say.
yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, one of the things I like to talk about on here, and one of the things I look for in people who are leaders is, for me, a lot of the people I look up to and a lot of people who have great leadership principles are people who are also Christians. Because for me,
Mhm.
the kind of the base for me of my decision making is, what does the Bible say about this? And I think a lot of the leadership principles that we see, and I'm working on my master's in leadership right now, a lot of the principles that we see in that are biblical principles. And the people who write the books that are secular may not always give the credit there, but they really are. Servant leadership and
Mhm.
accountability and investing in people, all of those things are things we see throughout scripture. So, and I know you're a believer. So how about you tell us a little bit about how you came to faith in Christ?
I've been a believer as long as I can remember. Like there's never really a search for truth with me. It's just always been the truth. That's the way I was raised. A lot of people can point to a moment in time when there was a noticeable change in their belief or whatever, but I don't have that. It's just always been, I haven't always been great at pursuing a relationship with Christ and behaving the way that I'm supposed to behave. Definitely had some years where I was interested in other things, but I always knew that what I was doing wasn't right. So it's always been, and really I can tell you that the day and the moment, the location that I was called into the ministry. But as far as to when I was saved, that the moment of conversion, I don't know. I don't have it. For a while, I used to be guilty about it when I was younger, but really, I see it. I see that the lack of it actually as being my testimony. That you know, I have a comfortable life, I have a blessed life, I have an amazing family, amazing career, and it would be a huge mistake for me to take credit for any of that. And that's kind of the testimony of God's grace through my mistakes and boneheaded years, and his constant pursuing of his children. And when we follow him, there are blessings with that, right?
Yeah, I know I had my friend's Harold Pickleton from Denison Fire. I had him on several months back. And one of the things that we talked about was how, he's like, I never had that, like my testimony. I grew up in church, walked an aisle, said a prayer when I was 10. But for like the next 9 years, I did what I wanted, and then
Mm,
wasn't until I was in college and after my freshman year of college that I actually surrendered to the Lord.
mm,
But I was
yep.
doing some things in college that I knew I shouldn't have been doing. I was doing like getting into the Texas country music scene, playing at bars and that whole lifestyle, pledging a frat, that whole lifestyle. And one of the things we talked about was how he's like, I don't really have that cool story, but
Mm,
how not having that kind of testimony, that kind of story is actually, in my mind, is probably a better testimony because it's not like, look what dumb things that I got into and God pulled me out of, but look how God kept me away from so many dumb things. You know what I mean? I've
yeah,
got a lot of those dumb things in my life. You know what I mean?
well, it's not that I don't. I've got plenty of
Oh
dumb
yeah.
things, but he's definitely kept me away from plenty as well. Oh, it's a kind of a relationship with some tension, right? Like as my will tries to conform to his, there's this tension there, and I think it's healthy. I think it's the way it's supposed to be. We're till we're united with him, in eternity and fully sanctified, there's always going to be a little tension between our saved spirit and our fleshly bodies.
So one thing, like my dad was a deacon, my parents were both Sunday school teachers, but I was not a PK, right? A
Mm,
pastor's kid. But you were,
yeah.
right?
Yes, sir. So is my wife.
So so really, so both of you were. So
Yep.
talk a little bit about that. What is it like growing up as a preacher's kid? Because my kids have. I've been in ministry for 24 years, constantly serving on churches that whole time, church staffs, in addition to being a full-time firefighter. But my kids are growing up in that. They're like, every now and then, if I use them as a sermon illustration, they're like, "Oh my gosh, what?" I don't understand that, but you do. So kind of walk through that. What is that like?
Man, I gotta say, Dad never once used us as a sermon illustration. Never us, never my mom. She told me once. So when I got called to the ministry and I was talking to Mom about it, she said, "I told your dad, don't ever use me or the kids as a sermon illustration." He stuck to it. So I'm telling you the same thing. Don't do that to your wife or kids. So
Too late.
I don't know what it's like to get outed in front of the whole congregation, man. I do not have that in common with a lot of other pastors' kids. But my experience of my brothers and sisters was very, very good. Dad was pastor of a small church in Tallahassee, Florida. That's where I was born and raised. Uh, I think at its largest, it was around 100 people. Well, I guess, nationwide, that's a medium-sized church, isn't it?
Mhm.
But it seems small compared to what we have in the Dallas metro area these days. But the church was full of great people. I didn't experience a lot of the horror stories that I hear from other pastors' kids, where the rules were different for them than the other people's kids, or maybe they lived in a glass house. It was a very loving church. They loved us as kids. I go back there now, and it's like seeing my uncles. The deacons and the elders are like my uncles. I was friends with their kids, and it was great. It really, truly was great. It was a blessing. It really was.
So you grew up as a pastor's kid in Florida, and then when
Hmm.
you graduate, you end up going to the military, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
walk me
So,
through that. What led you that direction?
man, that is what I wanted to do ever since I gained consciousness, man. I wanted to join the military, and I wanted to be a cop when I got out. I've known that. There's never really been much of a doubt. I went through a period of a couple years in high school where I considered being a teacher, but I got some exposure to law enforcement, and fell in love with it. So it kind of washed over those few years where I was thinking about going to be a teacher. But man, as soon as I got out of high school, I started talking to recruiters. I was not interested in going to college. I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to. This was so I graduated high school in 2005. The both wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, were pretty hot and heavy. Iraq, especially, was around the time of the surge, maybe a little before. I don't have my history nailed down on when the surge was. That's what I wanted to do. A lot of my friends were doing that. My family is a family of service, going back a long way. My uncle was a cop in Montana for a little while before he became a fireman, and he retired as a firefighter about 10 years ago out of Oregon. But my great grandfather was a cop. His dad was a cop in Chicago, died in the Chicago fire. So it's just kind of it's a family thing. Like, guys, the men in our family are cops or firemen or preachers. That's pretty much it. We're an Irish family, and that's just kind of how it goes. So, man, yeah, as soon as I graduated high school, started talking to recruiters, and it was really, really important to my dad that I go to college and that I'd be an officer in the military. And so I was raised to honor your father and mother. I enrolled in college, in the community college there in Tallahassee. Tallahassee, at the time, it was Tallahassee Community College. I think it is now Tallahassee State College. I think it's a 4-year university now. But did a semester, completely screwed off, and didn't do anything that I was supposed to do. I made good grades in the classes I was interested in, and didn't turn in any assignments in the ones I wasn't. And started kind of getting in trouble. Not serious trouble, but like the Holy Spirit was saying, hey, if you continue down this path, the things that you want to do, you're going to ruin those opportunities. Still battling through things. It was still really important to my dad that I go to college. So we kind of split the difference. And I know I was 18, and, technically I can go do what I want, but that's not the way I was raised, to disrespect my parents like that. And so he and I split the difference, and I joined the reserves. I joined the Navy Reserves, and it would also help pay for college, because when you're in the Navy Reserves, it covers tuition. And I explored all the different branches. I really didn't have my heart set on the Navy, but the recruiter Petty Officer Gribbs, the recruiter, was the best one. He beat out everybody else,
Talked you into it.
and he didn't lie to me either. He really didn't. In fact, I got a signing bonus, and like 60 days after I signed up, the Navy doubled the signing bonus for the job that I had committed to, and he tried to get me that extra bonus, and it didn't work out. I didn't get it, but
Hmm.
he had me sign a whole bunch more paperwork and tried to get it for me. So I really got to give him credit. A lot of people have horror stories about their recruiters, and I don't. But so I went to boot camp, went to A school, and I joined the Navy to be a cop. I thought that would help prepare me for after I got out of the military and being a cop. I was wrong. It's not at all the same, but I didn't know at the time. And of course, when you ask the recruiter, they're like, "Oh yeah, 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 sure, sure, buddy, it'll help out." He don't know. He's just agreeing with me, man. So he wasn't a cop in the military or outside. So anyway, uh, come back to Tallahassee, do another semester of college, and really, really realize, man, this is not what I want to do. And just back with the same old people, it didn't really change anything. I just had more money to spend, which wasn't a good thing. So there was a opportunity to deploy to Afghanistan, which is really what I wanted to do. And so I volunteered for it and deployed to Afghanistan. And that's where I met my wife. She was in the Air Force, and we were both stationed in Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan, doing detainee operations. It was a law enforcement type function, kind of a corrections mission. And I spent almost a year there. We got there January 2nd of 2008, left middle of November of that year. But like I said, while I was there, I met Amanda, and before she left sometime in October. I knew that if I didn't ask her to marry me, that I probably would never see her again. So I did, and everybody told me I was stupid, and that our marriage wasn't going to work out, and it was just a deployment marriage, and all that kind of stuff. But God's grace is good. Here we are, 18 years later. But we when I left, she and I had talked. She had a 5-year, or at the time, Tori was 4, and she said, "Hey, look, I can move to Tallahassee, Florida, where you're from, or you can move to Sherman, Texas, where I'm from. And but if you move to Texas, Tori will still be near her biological grandparents and Amanda's parents." She's like, "I kind of feel like that would be better for her growing up to have some of her biological family nearby. No knock against my family, but they're not really her family. Just because we get married, they're nice and all, but there's no biological connection."
Hmm.
And like I said, I really didn't have anything going for me in Tallahassee, so I figured, what the heck, man, let's do it. So when I got back from Afghanistan, I packed my stuff up and drove to Sherman, Texas, and few months without a job, but I had plenty of money saved up from being deployed, so it wasn't a big deal. And the one of the deacons at the church where Amanda's dad was pastoring was a lieutenant here at Sherman Police Department, and he said, "Hey, you were a cop in the Navy. You want to be a cop here?" I'm like, "Well, actually, yeah, that's the whole plan." And so he said, "Why don't you apply at Sherman?" So I did, and I got hired, and they sent me through the academy, and I ended up getting out of the Navy about 4 years later, out of the Navy Reserve, and transferred over to the Air Force Reserve, because that's where Amanda was. And that way we could drill together. We'd be not in the same unit because she was doing medical stuff and I was doing law enforcement stuff, but we'd be in the same wing and we could drill at the same place up in Oklahoma City. And we did 3 years of that. I did another deployment with them. And then in 2015, I promoted to E6 in the Air Force, which is a tech sergeant. And so I was in charge of a fire team of people, and four or five, not a whole lot, but I was also a corporal. I promoted to corporal at the Sherman Police Department, and so I was a assistant shift supervisor. And the two responsibilities were really, I couldn't meet them both. I couldn't do them both well, and there's a couple other things with the military, some bureaucracy stuff that the military wanted me to go take classes, some E4 level classes, because I had switched branches that I didn't have completed and things like that. And I really wasn't interested in doing that. And they weren't paying any bills, being in the reserves. And they were talking about another deployment, which I was fine with, but my family wasn't. So
Hmm.
just kind of hung up the boots in the military there in 2015. Been been serving in the Sherman Police Department ever since. Promoted up to lieutenant. Done a whole bunch of different things here. Uh, it's been a good career, man. Really has.
Well, I know, and your wife, I think I knew your wife probably before I knew you because she used to work
Yeah,
in the
yeah. Because
ER.
she
So
worked in the ER here
I remember
in
dropping
Sherman
patients
for
off
a
to
long
her when
time.
I first started at Sherman and riding the years I was riding the box and stuff. So I remember that. But so both of you guys have been a part of serving others in your professional careers for quite some time, but you've also done that outside of professional career. Y'all done other service things with church, but also with members of your family. So talk a little bit about
Mm.
that, about some different ways that you guys have served. I know Zoe's Place and different things you guys have done just to kind of to serve others and meet needs in the community.
Yeah, Zoe's Place. That was a lot of learning lessons there in that. You know, uh, Zoe is Amanda's brother. He was adopted from Romania in 1989 when it was a communist country, and he has some severe cognitive disabilities as well as autism. So he can't speak. It really requires total care. And in about 2016, I think her parents had an opportunity to go be professors. Both of them had their PhD. They had an opportunity to go be professors in the Middle East in Dubai. And because of some really complicated bureaucratic nonsense with the US government and the former communist regime in Romania, Zoe doesn't have a passport. A lot of people think Zoe is a girl's name. In this case, Zoe is a guy. It is the Americanized version of his Romanian name, which was Zoltan.
That's a cool name.
It is cool, but Amanda's family's from East Texas, and Rusty said that Zoltans don't fly around East Texas a whole
That's
lot, so we're
probably
just
true.
gonna go with Zoe. But yeah, so Zoe came to live with us. Rusty and Sharon asked if he could stay with us so that they could go take that opportunity, and we said yes. So Zoe lived with us for about 10 years, and we saw a need in the special needs community in the Sherman Denison area for a day hab for adults with special needs. There are a few, and I don't want to speak poorly about them, but we felt like there was an opportunity to provide a higher quality of service than what is currently available. So we opened up a nonprofit, got a 501c3, and uh, took some steps to try and get that rolling between 2018 and 2019. And we really had a lot of momentum going. And then COVID happened in 2020, and it made it really difficult to keep any momentum going. COVID only lasted for like 3 months in Grayson County, but
Mhm.
it was 3 months that kind of killed a lot of momentum. It was hard to get things going back again after that. And, as Amanda and I, we actually were talking about this recently, like, why didn't that work out? And, again, this is a testimony to God's grace where I think we can own some failure on that as followers of Christ. I think that was something that we were called to do that we didn't do well. I'll just own that for myself. To do that well would have required one or both of us to quit our jobs and do that full time. And we didn't see that going into it. So maybe that was a short-sighted mistake on our part that we thought we could juggle both things and find somebody else to manage our calling for us, which doesn't really work out. And so when it kind of came to it where, yeah, we're going to have to quit or quit doing this, we hadn't really thought through the whole thing, and neither one of us wanted to quit our careers. So I'm not saying, I don't know, that sometimes it's difficult to unravel the web of God's plan for each individual person. Uh, that's it's kind of how I see it. And so we ended up closing the doors in about 2022, closed down the 501c3 and turned the rent building back over to the landlord. We made some good progress, just never quite got the doors open to start taking customers. And it's got some regrets, definitely some learning lessons there on faith and some other things. So uh, yeah, it's only a mistake if you repeat it and don't learn from it, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, in addition to that, you also being called to vocational ministry and then growing up
Yeah.
in church too. You guys are both been serving in that area as well. So talk about some ways that you guys have served in church with different opportunities there.
Well, I mean, throughout my whole life, almost any church that we've been a part of, we've had some sort of teaching or discipleship role. We've attended a few churches in the Grayson County area during our time living here and filled that role at just about every one of them. We've been at North Park now since 2017, North Park Baptist Church, and it's been a great home full of some great mentors and people who have discipled us. And in 23, um, I was called into vocational ministry and communicated that to my pastor, David Murphy. And he has been an amazing asset, encouragement, and mentor as I have pursued that process now for almost 3 years. I was ordained in 2024 at North Park, and Amanda and I lead a small group that started off as about 4 or 5 people, and we're up to about 40
Mhm.
now. Um, and it's just during the Sunday school hour at our church. But I've also started doing some pulpit supply for other churches in Grayson County that are part of the GBA, the Grayson Baptist Association. And I spent 3 weeks in April preaching at New Heritage Baptist Church and getting to fellowship with the believers there and share the word. Got to do first communion service and first Easter sermon. So that was really cool. I really appreciate the brothers and sisters at New Heritage for inviting me and entrusting me with those really important aspects of our faith. And it means a lot to get to do that and share that with them. And Amanda has been really, really supportive. Amanda and the girls have come with me when I go and preach other places. Amanda's there every morning. She fills in for me. There've been a couple times, I still have a day job. One time a few years ago, this would have been in 2023 or 2024, maybe. We got called out about 3 o'clock in the morning for a suspicious death. And about 6 a.m., we realized it was a murder. And so I called Amanda, said, "Hey, it's a murder. You know what that means. You're not going to see me for the next 7 days." And I said, I don't have time to find somebody to fill in for Sunday school. So you're up. Love you. Appreciate it. See you later. And she's filled in for me many times when I've been traveling for different things. And so just something that we do together. She's got a great ministry with the women in our group. And it's kind of become a bit of a little family there. And I guess that's the way the Christian life's supposed to be. It's a great team effort between Amanda and I to
Yeah.
follow the calling that the Lord has given us into ministries.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because that the idea of being equally yoked, man, it's I wouldn't say difficult. I would say impossible
Mm.
to do ministry, especially without having your spouse on your side. You can do
Oh,
other jobs because they don't have to be involved. You know what I mean? Like, even
mhm.
if there's sacrifices that your spouse makes if you're a police officer, or if you're in nursing profession, whatever,
Right.
or if you're a firefighter, there's sacrifices made, but they're not intricately involved in the stuff that you do.
Yeah.
But ministry is totally different because they are. And my
Yeah.
wife, I'm glad you said that about Amanda, because my wife is, with our schedule, 24 on, 48 off, every third Sunday or Wednesday. And I'm the youth
Mm.
pastor. I
Yeah.
help lead worship. I play guitar, and I lead
Mm.
worship. I teach our high school class. 'Cause I'm the youth pastor on Sunday mornings, and then Wednesday nights I do youth and stuff. And on days I'm not there, which is pretty regular. I mean, I get off some, but on average, every third Sunday or Wednesday I'm not there. So my wife teaches for me, and then of course my son felt called to ministry a couple of years ago when he was about 14 or
That's
15. And
fantastic.
so he's on a rotation. I've got a rotation of 3 or 4 people that fill in on Wednesday night. So it's not the same person having to do that, because it's a little more in depth than the Sunday morning. Sunday morning's laid back,
Yeah.
just teach them from a
Yeah.
book. But on Wednesdays, it's, we're going through the book of Acts. So it's like, all right, you need to prep, you need to do some Bible study to get ready to teach. And so they're kind of rotating through doing that. But yeah, my wife, a kid, it's a whole family thing. And people don't think about
It
that
is.
about ministry, that it's an entire family
It
that serves
really is.
together.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And I'm really thankful. I don't know if anybody from New Heritage Baptist Church will watch this or not, but my kids really enjoyed going there these 3 weeks that we were there in April and being a part of ministry. They didn't necessarily have an assigned task or anything. Like they weren't passing the plate or doing sound or singing. They were just there in a supportive role, but they felt like they were a part of what God had called our family to do. And that was it was a blessing for to get to share that time with Amanda and the two girls that are still at the house.
Yeah. Watching your kids get excited about service and ministry is exciting. We were doing mission trips to Del Rio and Acuna, Mexico for years, but with our church. But this
Really?
last year we went to Honduras, and
Okay.
we're going back in a little over a month in June. We're going back, but this last year we were there for about 10 days. And one of the things we did was we're up 6,000 foot elevation in the mountains in these remote villages, kind of hiking from, you go through the woods on the side of a mountain kind of, and you see a little trail, and the interpreters there with us are like, who are all high school kids from a private Christian school. There's probably somebody down there. Let's go check it out. Okay. So, we walk down this, dirt trail about this wide, like a
Yeah,
game trail pretty much. And sure
that's
enough, you
cool.
see a little hut, little one room hut, and we knock on the door. And, I expect, I've been in ministry for 24 years, right? I expect to share the gospel and
Mhm,
and I think people expect me to do that.
mhm,
But we rotated through and had each person with us. So I was able to go with each one of my kids,
mm,
and to see both of my kids share the gospel and pray for strangers as we're going, and
mhm.
handing them rice and
That's
beans and just
huge.
asking, do you have any prayer requests? Can we share the gospel? Can we tell you about Jesus? Can we pray for you? Man, that was amazing. And to see that fire kind of get lit under them
Mm,
for ministry, for serving. And my daughter, Cammie, she wants to be a teacher. a freshman, so that may change. But
Hey, that's a
Connor
ministry too,
doesn't.
man.
Yeah, Connor doesn't know what he's called to do now. He loves sports, but he also feels like it might be called to ministry. But even the one who doesn't feel called to ministry, saying just because I don't feel called to ministry doesn't mean this isn't my responsibility, to share the
Right.
gospel. So just getting your kids involved, that's important. I'm with you on that. I'm super excited to hear that they're serving, and support role is huge. Even a
It is.
supportive role for dad is a huge deal.
We think of authority, this is a leadership podcast, right? So we think of authority as a position, but it's not. Jesus didn't have a position. I mean, he was the Messiah, but it wasn't like any of the positional authorities at the time recognized
Hmm.
his position. His authority came from God, not from man, but his influence came from the authority with which he spoke. If you look after the Sermon on the Mount, and there's a couple other places, I can't remember the references, but after Jesus would share a message, the Gospels reference that the people would marvel at the authority with which he spoke, right?
Hmm.
You don't have to have a title. It's almost, I think in the Matthew passage after the Sermon on the Mount, so that's Matthew at the end of chapter
5 or
8.
6. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
five
it's
to
at
eight.
the
Yeah,
end. It's
yeah, yeah.
after the Sermon on the Mount is
Hmm.
over. I think it contrasts the way that Christ speaks with authority compared to the way that the scribes and Pharisees would teach.
Yeah,
I know that's in the Gospels. I think that's the reference for it. There's a difference. And the scribes and Pharisees had the positional authority. Christ didn't need it. And I'm reading a book on adaptive leadership, and it talks about leadership being an activity and not a position. And so for my kids to come with me, they're performing a function as a leader. Now, you don't have to be a deacon or an elder or on staff at a church to have leadership. Because we all know, I mean, fire service, police service, church ministry, somebody can have leadership and not have a position and make your life miserable if they're
yeah,
using that leadership for the wrong purposes or to foster their own agenda. And so, yeah, just the whole idea of leadership being service, being an activity, I think is really important for us to encourage people and recognize people when they do that, so that they understand the responsibility with which they serve, right? Because if they're not seeing their service as leadership, then they're thinking, oh, well, I just don't have time. It comes with a whole nother set of responsibilities and outcomes if they realize that what they're doing is actually a form of leadership.
yeah. I think you're exactly right. I think you can have a position and be a terrible leader, and you
Yeah,
can be a great leader with no position. And
right.
we probably in our careers in churches and in PD and fire, I know I've seen that. I know you've seen it too.
Hmm.
Both
Absolutely.
aspects of that, and so
Absolutely.
it's the idea of, I went to a leadership symposium the last couple of years and taught at it this year. But one of the classes that there's this theme that keeps coming up that's always a class is something like lead from the bottom up. And I think that's a good idea, but I think it's more not even lead from the bottom up because not everybody there's at the bottom, right? You're at a leadership
Yeah.
symposium. A lot of people are probably chiefs or officers or whatever,
Right.
shift
Right.
supervisors. Lead where you are. Don't lead from the
Hmm.
bottom up. Don't lead from the top down. Just lead from wherever you're at. I think that's an
Hmm.
important thing. And that looks similar no matter what role you're in. Leading has a lot more to do about your attitude, your heart, the idea of serving others than it does with being in control or being in charge. And when you
Oh
take
yeah.
that mentality of I'm here to serve, when you're the top of the pyramid in a leadership role in an organization, you have all of these people that you're serving,
Hmm.
It's almost easier. I had a captain one time who I asked him, I said, why didn't you'd been really good as a chief. Why didn't you ever promote? This is towards the end of his career. And he said, I know that the limit of my ability to serve is down here. I can
Hmm.
serve 4 or 5 guys at a station really, really well. If I'm chief or something like that, I'm serving 100 people.
Hmm.
I knew I wouldn't be good at that, but I knew I can really
Yep.
invest in these 4 or 5 guys. And it's almost like in my mind, it's a self-sacrificial thing of like, I could have chased after this,
Hmm.
but I knew that my goal of serving is better served right here. Like what I'm good
Yeah.
at, what I'm called to do is right here. And it was
Yeah.
a really meaningful thing for me to hear.
I agree. Yeah, knowing your calling is huge, and recognizing that you have the ability to influence and lead from wherever you are in whatever profession. It doesn't have to be a ministry profession for you to do ministry or to lead. Yeah, It's an all-encompassing thing. We're all called to it, right? Like there's no book of the New Testament that says, all right, if you're not a deacon or an elder, you get to coast, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah. I
we're all called to serve.
yeah, I know in our role, I know I've had people ask me, how do you reconcile uh, being a firefighter and being a pastor? Because
Mm,
I've been in fire service for about 15 years, been in ministry for 24. How do you reconcile those? Because they're two totally different jobs. And my response is, they're really not that
mm,
different. Like
mm.
my goal is
They're
to
not.
serve and to be a lot for people. That could be citizens, it could be patients, from medical, it could be the guys on my crew who I'm in charge of leading. I mean, that can, or it can show itself in multiple different ways. I've been able a couple of times now, have been able to have guys come into the office on duty and ask about what it means to be a Christian, and
Mm,
had guys pray to receive Christ while on duty at
that's cool.
work, coworkers. And
Yeah.
so when people ask, like, why don't you? I thought you were called to be a pastor. Like, why'd you go be a fireman? I'm like, that's a long story. We don't have time to get into right now, um, but it's still ministry to me. It's still an act of
Absolutely.
ministry because it's as well with police, with first responders. They're people who love to serve, but they're also a lot of people who struggle. There's a lot of addiction. There's a lot of family issues. There's a lot of heartbreak with things like that in our career, just because it's a difficult career. Civil service, all those civil service jobs are difficult jobs on families.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of places where they need hope and where they need the peace that only Jesus offers. And
That's right.
I get to be an ambassador of that, where somebody has to, and like you said, I don't get off the hook because I'm at the fire station from being a light for Christ, a light in a dark place. So
Yeah, there's a lot of research. My master's degree is in public administration, so there's a lot of research that goes into how to fix the problems. And honestly, we're chasing our tails. I mean, does anyone, our own employer aside, does anyone really feel like government's doing a good job anywhere throughout human history? No, because it's an imperfect process implemented by imperfect people. And really the only answer to any of this is to recognize that we're sojourners here. This isn't our home. Our home is in eternity with Christ. When you realize that, then all the rest of it stays in perspective and you're able to endure the life here on earth a little bit better. And you're able to recognize what your role is, which is to introduce other people to the kingdom. So
yeah,
it's, uh, it's,
I know
it's a good thing.
government's like you said, ours aside, ours is great, right? Our
Yeah,
local
yeah, yeah,
city
yeah,
government's
yeah.
fantastic. But, it's crazy to me that people, I won't say we, but I'll say people as a whole expect government to legislate and to fix this
Mm,
problem that's a spiritual problem that existed before governments ever did. Like the problem of fallen man, of us being imperfect and selfish and wanting what we want, no matter how it hurts somebody else, because
mhm,
it's what I want,
mhm.
is really the root of all of these problems. And so to expect the government to come and legislatively fix this uniquely spiritual problem, it's not going to happen.
No.
Jesus is the only one that can fix this problem. And
Well,
thankfully, God God sent him to do that, with his death on the cross and resurrection and the hope that we have in that. That's the fix.
yeah. Well, if you notice, that's what even his own disciples, but that's what they were expecting in a Messiah, right? Was a political leader
Yeah.
who came
Fix the
in,
government.
hit the easy button, and fix their life here on earth. And that isn't the point.
Yeah.
It's never been the point. It's always been
So
about reuniting us with him.
Oh, yeah. So we've been talking about faith a lot. So talk about that a little bit. How has your faith been an asset? How has that helped you in your PD career? Because I know you guys, we see a lot of things. You see a lot of things. How do you reconcile that? And how has that helped you? How's your faith helped you throughout your time in police?
It helps give you hope. I mean, just living life as a human on earth can often be hopeless. And then in these first responder jobs, police, fire, EMS, ER nurses, teachers, we often deal with people whose life circumstances are tragic and on their worst day. And when that is the lens with which you view your society, it can make an already hopeless outlook even worse. And recognizing that the source of all of that, you sit down across the table from a sex offender who sexually assaulted his own 3-year-old daughter. It makes you wonder, how could somebody do something like that? I mean,
Mhm.
that's immediately any decent human being. That's the question that comes to their mind is how could somebody sexually assault their own child? Well, sin. Sin is how. So it helps keep those tragic, difficult moments in perspective. Honestly, the most difficult one was the young lady who we didn't find who got swept away in the flood 2 years ago. And that one was most difficult because it wasn't the result of somebody's sin. As I've processed through that, as I have prayed through that, as the Lord and I have battled back and forth about that, it's been difficult because of that. It's easier relative to a natural disaster that takes the life of a young lady and her dad. That's hard enough, but then you never find her. And I went with Chief Jeff Coat to go tell her mom that we couldn't find her. That is the hardest thing I've ever had to do
Mhm.
as a cop. And what a gracious lady. She had every right to cuss us up and down, tell us to get out, throw stuff at her, blast us on social media. She's gracious and kind and loving in the midst of her grief. And it was remarkable. But processing through that was really difficult. Now, I don't have the answer for it. I really don't. Um, there, I'll know one day. I've already told the Lord that he's,
I expect an answer on this one.
when Jacob is wrestling with the Lord as he returns back to his family household in Genesis, and he grabs the Lord and he won't let him go and says, "I won't let you go till you bless me." Yeah, I told the Lord, like, when I'm in heaven, I'm gonna grab his robe. I'm not letting you go till you answer that question. What what was the plan? What was the purpose? I know he's got one. He's good. He's loving. He wouldn't have come in and suffered and died for all of us if he wasn't. So the problem then for us is reconciling who we know him to be and what we see happening. And reconciling those two things is difficult because we don't have all the information. That's frankly what it is we don't have all the information. And one day maybe we will. But until then, reason doesn't answer it for us. And so where our own reason fails, it requires some faith. And where faith doesn't seem to answer it, I actually found in that moment, maybe the first time I was really questioning his plan or his motives or why he wouldn't just answer a prayer. I remember at one point during that 27 days that you guys and us were out there
Oh,
looking for
yeah.
this young lady, my boss had sent me home and said, "Don't come back to work for 2 days." And so I was driving around town and listening to a podcast. I don't remember what podcast it was. I was listening to a podcast and this guy give a testimony about how God cured this crazy uncurable cancer and he's been cancer free. And I was so mad and I was hitting the steering wheel and I turned the podcast off. I'm like, "You'll do that. And I'm not even asking you to bring this girl back from the dead. We just want to find her body. Like, that's
Yeah.
all I'm asking. That's not that much." I don't know, man. I
This
don't know.
morning I was reading through Psalms, going through read the Bible in a year, and I'm reading Psalm 80, and I'm glad that you brought this up because Psalm 88 says this: "You have put me in the lowest part of the pit, in the
Mm,
darkest places, in the depths. Your
mm.
wrath weighs heavily on me. You have overwhelmed me with all your ways. You have distanced my friends from me. You've made me repulsive to them. I'm shut in and can't go out. My eyes are worn out from crying. Lord, I cry out to you all day long. I spread my hands out to you. Do you work wonders for the dead? Do departed spirits rise up to praise you?" So David's asking all these questions,
Yeah,
and I love how when he gets to Psalm 92, he starts off and he says, "It is good to give thanks to the Lord, to sing praise to your holy name, most high." Like he's asking all these questions. And that's what I always tell people is that they're like, "Oh,
it's
I'm
okay.
questioning God." And I'm like, "That's fine. He's a big enough God to handle your questions. That's fine. He can handle that. As long as you
Philosophically,
come back to that, long as you come back to that moment of God, I don't understand. I'm mad. I'm frustrated. I don't get it, but I know that you do, you
yeah.
know?
So I don't. Some people think questioning God's a sin. I would disagree. If your
Yeah.
heart's in the right place, if you're doing it pridefully, presuming to know more than the Most High God, eh, I'm probably gonna part ways with you on that one. But if you're coming before your Creator and your Savior, saying, "God, what I'm seeing doesn't make sense with who I know you to be, and help me make sense of this, and why? Why is this the way that it is?"
Mhm.
I think it's perfectly healthy. The idea that our God cannot handle our frustration and our anger means that we don't have a relationship, right? If your wife cannot come to you and say, "Colby, you said this and it embarrassed the tar out of me at church yesterday,"
It's
then
happened.
you don't have a relationship with your wife, right? She is
Yeah.
simply a possession or an item that you control. And we know that that is not the case with our Savior. And so I think that the questioning part, it comes with some maturity, but I think it's a really really important piece of our relationship with him because it's a really good way to discern his will. And I find that the most difficult part of the Christian life is discerning his will. And maybe it's because I overthink things. I don't know. Or I'm not smart enough and don't think enough. I don't know.
I'm
But
both of those. Those are
yeah,
both me.
both of them at the same time.
That's me.
I think I'm overthinking it, but I'm actually just really dumb.
Yeah. I'm
That's what
I'm
it
I'm dumb and I overthink, which is worse because I'm dumb. So, that's
Right.
both of them.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's change gears for a second. What is a good story? Now, I know you have a lot of bad stories being a cop for years and
Yeah.
years. What's a good story? What's a good story? Funny story, something good or funny that's happened that you can share.
Oh, man. Most of them are kind of raunchy.
Yeah, when I've had cops and firefighters on here, and when I have other people, coaches and stuff, they come up with them. I mean, quick like that. When I've
Yeah.
had cops and firefighters, people in EMS or any kind of public service thing, they're like, you got to let me think about it for a minute."
Man, honestly, one of the funniest ones. It's funny to me because I have a bit of an ironic sense of humor, but it was pretty early on in my career. And this guy called and wanted to report a burglary. He's a patrol officer. I go over there and, you know, for a burglary, that's where somebody enters your home and they take something. There's some other elements to it, but most of the time it's they take something. So I asked him, what was taken? Nothing. Nothing in the home is missing. Okay. All right. How do you know then that somebody was in your house? Is there forced entry? Is there broken windows? Somebody kick in the door? No, no, none of that. Like, okay. So how do you know? And I would have thought that he maybe was mentally ill, except that he was a pharmacist. So I was really hoping that he wasn't mentally ill for the sake of the community at large.
Mhm.
I said, if nobody, those signs of forced entry and none of your stuff's missing, then how do you know that somebody was even in your home? How do you know that somebody broke in? And he said that that's because that there was an exceptionally large turd in the toilet bowl that was there when he got home. And he called his wife and she said that it wasn't hers.
Mm.
Therefore, the logical conclusion was that someone had broken into his home and didn't take anything, but just used the restroom.
Left something instead.
Left something instead, yes. And I was pretty young in my career, so I didn't really have the guts to just come out and say, "You're telling me that the most logical explanation here is that someone broke into your home without showing any signs of forced entry, pooped in your toilet, and left it. That's a more logical conclusion than the fact that your wife is just too embarrassed and doesn't want to claim it." That's what I'd
It's
tell
just,
him now.
"Honey, it's
Yeah, if you call your wife, you're like, "Oh my God, there's this huge turd in the toilet. Is this yours?" What do you think she's going to say? No.
no, absolutely not."
And this guy was so convinced. He was convinced that there was this conspiracy. His neighbors, that they had been watching him and staking his house out, and that he had interrupted the burglary by coming home at a different time than normal. I'm like, man, this
He
is
interrupted
nuts.
the burglary. Does that mean he didn't finish that's why he didn't flush? That's it.
And of course, he had flushed it, so there wasn't even any like.
My gosh.
I'm like, come on. So I didn't even take a report, but that call sticks out to me. It's a good example of confirmation bias. I'm going to fit all of these circumstances into this narrative that I believe happened, even though it's not the most logical explanation. Pretty nuts.
Well, running out of time, almost done. Let me ask you one more thing. What is a good leadership lesson? And we've talked about some of this stuff already, but what is a good leadership lesson you've learned somewhere from church, from ministry, from military, from PD, life in general? What's a one good leadership lesson you could leave with us today?
It's okay not to know everything. And the worst possible thing isn't to not have the answer, but it's to pretend or think that you do when you don't. Um, I have had a lot of opportunities in my career, both in ministry and in law enforcement, to be in charge of things that I had zero experience doing. When I became a lieutenant in 2020, I had never been a detective, and I was put in charge of the criminal investigations division, and I didn't know a thing. The only thing that saved me, I think, uh, is that I didn't think I knew anything, and I listened, tried. I wasn't perfect, certainly wasn't perfect, but I tried to listen to the people who knew a lot more than I did. I relied on their advice. Really, most of leadership is just getting your people what they need to do their job anyway and getting out of their way. I tried to do that. I tried to find areas where I could help them do their job better, where I could improve the environment, or get them better tools or whatever. And then letting them know that they weren't working on their own. And so when we had major cases, I tried to be involved, not to get in the way, but to be there to provide the logistics, whether it's food. I mean, when we're on something for a long time, man, the number one thing that everybody wants is food. And if it's cold, they want coffee or hot chocolate. And if it's hot, they want water and Gatorade. So you make sure that those things are coming, and you make sure that the red tape is out of the way and let the people do their job. Man, it honestly, it's, I think you'll get way more success. And my first year as a lieutenant, Sherman had 8 murders. We usually have 2, maybe. So brand new, know nothing lieutenant, 8 murders. And we solved all 8 of them, which is pretty rare, really. Like if you look at national statistics on homicides, only 80% solved. And so in my 5 years as a lieutenant, of all the murders that we had, only 1 went unsolved. It remains unsolved, but we were more in the 90 something percent range. And it's not because of me, because I didn't investigate anything. I'm not the reason that we solved any of those cases, not a single one of them. I didn't interview anybody. I didn't collect any evidence. Nothing. And so I don't take credit for the success, but I do credit my people with the success, and the detectives and the criminalists that did it. And it's simply my job to just help them do their job.
Mhm.
And one of the best compliments I got was from one of the sergeants who was towards the end when I was getting ready to rotate out. But he's now a sergeant. At the time, he was a corporal. And he said, the best thing is that you don't think you know everything. Like, that's the best thing about you as our lieutenant, is you don't think you know everything. And I'm like, well, good, because that's what I've been trying to do for 5 years now, is like, listen to you guys. I ask questions. The way that you implement that for me, or the way I implemented that philosophy of not knowing everything, was asking questions. Why do we do this way? There were some times where a new face, somebody who didn't come up through the ranks, can see things a different way. And so we were able to identify some more efficient ways of doing things. But it was a collaborative effort. It wasn't
Mhm.
me mandating something. Sometimes we identified inefficiencies in the process that we couldn't fix because it was out of our control, because it was mandated from the state level, But yeah, that's the leadership lesson that I learned was, hey, be humble, be able to admit you don't know, ask questions, and let your people do what they've been trained to do. It's okay. It doesn't make you any less. Going back to what you said earlier, you don't have to say you're in charge to be in charge, right? There were times when I felt inadequate. There were times that I felt like I was an imposter. I had imposter syndrome. There were times when I felt like, what am I even doing here? They don't need me. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't need me at all.
Yeah.
But Chief wanted me there, and so I was there, and I was able to take the hard work that they did and report it to him so that he felt comfortable with the direction of the investigation. And if that's all I did, then great, mission accomplished. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes the best thing you could do as a supervisor is just gather your people's way, right? Just let them do their thing. And we talked about before about when you try to get too involved, sometimes we call that, micromanaging. And that's usually either a sign that you don't trust your people to do their job, or you haven't trained them to do their job. And that's
yeah,
on you both times. So,
yeah,
but if you're comfortable enough to trust them and let them do their thing, that means that you trust them. It means that they're trained, and you know that.
yeah.
Just get out of their way and let them do their job. If they need you, they'll come get you.
That was the unique thing about my situation, is that I didn't have a choice, because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I had no clue, not a stinking clue. I mean, I hadn't investigated anything more than family violence before in my career. I don't know what the medical metaphor for all of that would be, but it's a pretty big difference. So yeah, I didn't have a choice, and it not nerve wracking, but it caused anxiety. Like, there was a lot of anxiety, right? Because I'm the first one that's going to get yelled at us if it gets screwed up, right? If you don't solve it, I'm the one who's going to have to explain to the chief of police and to the city manager why a murder wasn't solved. And you can't go in there and say, well, it was their fault, right? I mean, I guess you could, but you won't stay in your position long for
Yeah.
multiple reasons if you do that. So yeah,
I
it
think I think people a
caused a
lot of
lot of
people
anxiety.
avoid that responsibility though of that because they look for opportunities to blame other people instead of just saying, "Look, if it goes south, I'll take the blame."
Yeah.
But the people underneath you respect and appreciate you more when they know that that's the case. When they know that there's this line of defense, like we're going to do the job to the best of our ability. And if something happens, especially outside of our control, we have somebody there to look out for us. We have somebody there who cares about us, who's going to not throw us under the bus, who's going to say, they're my people, I'll handle it. You know what I mean? If something goes wrong. And I think that's good though. I think that's a great thing. And I think it's something that regardless of how much knowledge or abilities you had in that, in that sphere of that job coming into it, like you said, not much, just being the kind of person that would say, I don't know everything, but know that I'm here for you guys. I'm here to
Yeah.
support you. I'm here to serve you. That goes a long way, man.
Well, I hope it did. I hope that they enjoyed my time there as lieutenant. And I knew, so we had most of my time as a CID lieutenant was under Chief Flores, but not and then the last couple of years was under Chief Jeffco. But either one of them, um, had I gone to them and blamed my people for any of the failures and shifted the blame to them, I'd have been replaced. I mean, in civil service, they couldn't have necessarily demoted me for it, but they'd have found a different job for me to do. Neither one of them, Jeff Goodall Flores, I knew neither one of them would tolerate a leader not taking accountability for the mistake. And so I was, it really wasn't even an option.
Yeah,
Thankful.
yeah,
I'm thankful that
yeah,
I didn't have the ability to take the coward's way out.
yeah.
Kind of keeps you, which is the sign I think of a good organizational culture
Mhm.
is everyone is expected to hold a high standard. No one's going to be given the opportunity even um, to to behave that way or to be that type of a leader.
One more lighthearted question.
All right.
Has nothing to do with anything we've talked about so far. I know you guys are Disney fans.
Yes, sir.
Disney Park, Disney. Have y'all done Universal too, or just mainly
Uh-huh.
Disney stuff?
Yeah, we've been to
Okay.
Universal a couple times.
So because we are too. So let me ask you, favorite park, one park of, I don't know if you've been to the California Disneys, the ones in Florida,
We had,
the
we had.
Universal, either place, had to pick one park. What's your favorite?
Well, it's not much of a competition for me. It's Orlando at Disney World's Magic Kingdom.
The big castle.
The big castle, yes, sir. I grew up in Florida, like I said earlier, and my grandfather was involved in insurance in the state of Florida, and he would organize a statewide conference for insurance agents every year, and he would always have that conference at Disney World. The way he told me is that when he started doing it in the 70s, that Disney was the only place where he could have a conference of that size. I don't know if that's true or not. I wasn't around in the early 70s, so who knows? But he continued doing it on into the 90s. And so for 2 weeks in the summer, we'd go and hang out at Disney for 2 weeks. And when the conference, 1 week of the conference, and then he would spend a few days with us after the conference. And so I have memories there with my grandparents and with my brothers and sisters and with my mom. Dad never went. He didn't like Disney. Wasn't his jam. But as it's kind of where I grew up. Like there's a lot of nostalgia there for me. And I mean, they're not the most exciting rides. And it's not the cheapest place to go on vacation. And the crowds and it's hot, you know, but, uh, but I love it. And, Amanda had never been when we got married and, she likes to tell a story. She had a vacation planned there with Tori, our oldest, when we got married, and she'd used a travel agent and they were staying at offsite. They weren't staying in the Disney bubble. And, I was like, no, that's what peasants do. Here, let me show you how this is done. And so we rearranged the trip. We didn't get to take it right away because we actually got pregnant with Reagan pretty soon after we got married. When Reagan was pretty young, I think within her first year or two was our first trip. So sometime around 2011 or 2012. And we've been going pretty regularly ever since. And Amanda graduates in December with her doctor of nursing practice. And I asked her what she wanted to do to celebrate. And is to go back to Disney World. So we'll go there for spring break next year. And we actually hadn't been and done several days at the parks in several years. We've done several cruises and some other things over the last few years. But yeah, that's for me hands down. The OG
We've
man.
gotten to be we've been big Universal fans the last few years as the kids have gotten older because the rides are better. I mean,
Yeah.
they just are.
Yeah.
We need to get older. But we went back. We went to California the first time, stayed a week before we ever went to Florida. And then Now we've done both multiple times, and I was against it because, like you said, it's expensive. It's just it's overpriced for kids,
Yeah,
and all of them. I'm like a little kid when I'm there. I want to do everything.
me
So
too. I'm able
I'm
to.
the
I would say I let my hair down, but I've got male pattern baldness, so that's not the case. But
but that's why I'm wearing a hat. So
I'm able to relax, man, and like I said, our oldest daughter's 22 and she's married, and we're gonna have grandkids pretty soon, and like so. Our daughters do cheer. I mentioned that at the beginning, and they competed in Orlando 2 weeks ago at the World All-Star Worlds cheerleading competition. Both of them did really well. Reagan's team came in sixth in the world, and Allie's team came in second. They're
wow,
in different divisions. They're not competing against each other for the sanity of my own household. Thankful, but they did really well, and so we had a day after, and we decided to go to the Magic Kingdom. That was the first time we'd been to the parks together, the four of us in several years, and we're like, hey, let's just go do something fun. Like, let's go do a character meal. Like, we're all, you know, basically adults, all in the youngest one's 13. Why would we go to a character meal and see Mickey and Donald and Goofy and Daisy? Like, let's just do it. So we did, had a great time. And I was like, I really can't wait to come back here with a 2-year-old little girl again, the way that I've done so many times in the past. So for the first time, Disney kind of had a different spin where,
hmm
all right, we're we're getting ready to be able to come back here and enjoy this with little girls and little boys again, and enjoy just the expression on a little kid's face the first time they see Mickey Mouse in real life, or the first time they see their favorite princess in real life. It's a pretty exceptional thing. So I'd forgotten what it was like with Reagan and Tori and Allie, but I'm looking forward to getting to do that with Tori's kids soon. So it'll,
hopefully
it'll be
I'm a
fun.
lot further behind you on that, but eventually, one day it'll happen. Well, man, I want to thank you for being on with us today. Thanks for the great
Absolutely.
conversation. We may do it again sometime. We may
I
get
hope the
into some
listeners
other
found it
things.
interesting.
So, want to thank you, man. I want to thank you guys for listening to us, and we'll catch you next time on Call to Lead.